You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another game review. If you've been watching my streams for the past week, you've probably seen this coming, because I have been playing a lot of Avgn 1 and 2 Deluxe. Avgn 1 and 2 Deluxe is a re-release and remaster of Avgn Adventures and Avgn 2 Assimilation. The original versions of those games came out in 2013 and 2016, respectively. It also includes a bonus third game, which is only 3 stages plus a boss, so 4 total, called the Tower of Torment. It's basically an extra world for Avgn 2. I played the PS4 version of this game. It came out in 2020. I pre-ordered it when they announced it. So I've always been a pretty big fan of Angry Video Game Nerd, Avgn, obviously. I even like the movie. A lot of people don't like the movie. I thought the movie was great. It's not perfect, and it wouldn't have been the best episode if we counted as one, but I still think it's great. I don't know why people hate it so much, to be perfectly honest. Now, what these games are platformers where you play as the nerd using a Nintendo Zapper or a Super Scope. The Super Scope is in both games. It's a temporary power-up in the first game, and a permanent upgrade in the second game. But the plot of the first game involves the nerd getting dragged into the game world and having to get through a bunch of shitty games and defeat Fred Fucks to get out of the game. The second game involves the entire world being turned into a game world. There are actually a lot of changes from the original versions of the game, especially 2. We'll get to that in a minute. Avgn 1 has 8 stages that you can select from before you unlock the 9th and final stage. Plus, there is also a tutorial that you play before the actual main stages. These stages can be played in any order, similar to the Mega Man games, and hidden amongst them there are collectibles. There's the nerd cartridges that spell out the word nerd. These were actually not in the original version of Avgn 1. They were originally a new concept in Avgn 2, but they were added into 1 in the Deluxe Edition. The other collectibles are the shit pickles, which are hidden throughout the stages, which were always in the game. And then there's the future nerds, which were originally cameos from different YouTubers. However, due to licensing issues, the Deluxe Edition replaces these cameos with future nerds instead. I found 2 shit pickles while I was playing through the game, and I found a good amount of the nerd cartridges. However, I did not encounter any future nerds. The last collectible, if you really want to call it that, in the first game is collecting the different characters. In the first game, the playable characters include obviously the nerd, who you start out as, and then there's the guitar guy, which is based on the skeleton version of Kyle Justin's guitar character from the Avgn intro. Then there's Mike Matei, and there's the Bullshit Man. Each of these characters play completely differently. For instance, the skeleton guy can shoot through walls. That's his special ability. He walks slightly faster than the other characters, but his jump is not as good as the nerds. Mike Matei has a Luigi jump from Mario 2 where he can jump a lot higher. The Bullshit Man moves very slowly, jumps not very high at all, but has a double jump, and he's the only character with a double jump. But the upside to the Bullshit Man is that he can deal massive damage. His attacks do amazing damage. It does way more than any other characters. With Mike Matei's character, it unlocks secret paths that you can otherwise not find. Sometimes in the case of hidden blocks, other times in the case of destructible walls. Also, each character's weapons work completely differently. The nerd's is the only one that can be aimed. Guitar Guy's just goes through walls. Mike Matei has a lightsaber that you just run up and mash him at close range. And the Bullshit Man throws shit at them, and it, again, cannot be aimed, has a very specific trajectory, but when it hits, it deals massive fucking damage. As for the changes in the first game, other than the YouTube cameos being swapped out with future nerds, there was a couple of little jokes and references that were either changed or removed, which I thought was really lame. For instance, in Boo Haunted House, which is the last available stage before the 9th stage, there's a line of dialogue in the original version where he says, "Gah, bitch scared me." But they changed it to "Gah, goddamn witch scared me," instead of "Gah, bitch scared me." So, I don't know, it's weird, it's a weird choice. And also, when I defeated Bimmy and Jimmy, he didn't say "up yours with a twirling lawnmower," which I know he says in the original as a reference to Nightmare on Elm Street. So I was kind of disappointed that he didn't say that, but maybe he didn't because I was the Bullshit Man when I defeated Bimmy, because it's much easier to finish them off with the Bullshit Man. because there was also no one-liner or quip when I defeated Fred Fucks, the final boss of the game, who I similarly beat with the bullshit man. However, the thing that I find odd about that is while you're progressing through the level, you'll still get the nerd's one-liners and quips when you're playing as other characters. Speaking of the other characters, my favorite one to play was Mike Matei. I liked having the big jump, and the lightsaber did a good amount of damage and was also rapid fire. So I think it was a nice balance, and it was easily my favorite of the characters to play. My least favorite to play was the bullshit man. I literally only used him in boss fights. And then I would say the most frequent character I played was just the nerd, because he was obviously the most balanced. One other change from the original version is that Fred Fucks was changed to look more like his Gilbert Gottfried appearance from the Life of Black Tiger AVGN episode, which I think was great, because obviously the original version of Fred Fucks was just kind of generic in the original version of the game, so in this case this is a positive change. Alright, now on to AVGN 2. The differences from the first game, instead of just picking stages in any order, there are 4 worlds. Now you can choose which order to play these worlds in. However, in order to play the second stage of a world, you must play the first, and to play the third, you must play the second, etc. Now, each of these worlds has 4 stages, 3 of which are the regular stages, and the 4th of which is the boss stage. Having the bosses be a separate stage was definitely a lot easier to actually do the bosses, because you do get checkpoints within the levels. I played the game on normal difficulty for context, because there are actually some difficulties that do not have checkpoints at all, and there are also different amounts of lives you have on some difficulties. There are also less death blocks on the normal and easy difficulties. Normal I chose because I felt it was like the perfect amount of challenge, and the difficulty just carries over to all 3 games once you've selected it. Incidentally, the gameplay is a side-scrolling platformer that obviously takes inspiration from various different games, and has different theme stages, and you have weapons, so like Contra, kind of, especially with the way the nerd can aim his stuff. But obviously, they throw a bunch of stuff at it to make it more challenging. On the normal difficulty, I had infinite lives on the Deluxe Edition. This was not the case on the original version, but on the Deluxe Edition it is. So in AVGN 2, once you've beat the actual 4 main worlds, you unlock the final world, which is just 2 stages, the actual stage and then the boss fight. As I said, it does make it easier that the boss fights are separated out. That way you don't have to worry about having to play the whole level again if you have to quit, because it does not save checkpoints when you quit a level. It only saves your progress once you have beat a level. So for instance, on AVGN 1, I started with Boo Haunted House, got stuck on Bimmy and Jimmy the boss fight for like 2 hours, decided to stop that level for the time being, and just went and did the other stages. Similarly to AVGN 1, AVGN 2 does have collectibles. There's obviously the nerd cartridges, especially since they did originate in 2 in the original version. However, there are no shit pickles in 2. There are also no other playable characters. Mike Matei does return in the tutorial to guide you through it, and the bullshit man is seen in the intro, but none of them are playable. Instead of having different playable characters with different abilities, you get upgrades throughout the stages. So there's the Glove of Power, which is obviously the Power Glove. It lets you do very strong punches that deals a good amount of damage. It also lets you destroy destructible walls to find other secrets. There's the Loafers, which you get in the tutorial that allow you to wall jump, which is essential to actually beating the game. There's the Cape, which is based on the NES Power Pad. There's the Turbo Pad controller, which allows you to charge your shots. There's the Super Scope, which is renamed to the Uber Scope. And there's the Fukonami Swearin' Scout 9001, which allows you to see hidden paths, similarly to Mike Matei's ability. It's based off that one NES attachment that has, like, the thing that goes over your eye, and it's also a reference to Scouters, because, you know, it's very similar to a Scouter from DBZ. Now, I mentioned that 2 had the most changes from the original. Originally, the antagonist to 2 was the Nostalgia Critic. They changed that out for it being Fred Fucks returning. I think there's a story reason that actually makes a lot more sense to have Fred Fucks come back. So, though I don't like that it's, you know, a change, I understand it and it doesn't bother me. I think it's actually better for the story, because the Nostalgia Critic's dialogue and reasoning doesn't make as much sense. But they also removed any references to the AVGN movie. For instance, the Area 52 stage was very heavily themed off the movie, with a lot of enemies from the movie. They completely changed that, redesigned the enemies to be just thematic with the stage and have nothing to do with the movie. And the original final battle was Death Moxix, which is that giant mech from the movie, and instead they had it be a robot that Fred Fucks built. And in AVGN 2, another thing I forgot to mention, the stage select is very similar to Mario 3, with the overworld map. But you go on through the stages, and you collect something called the Flux Capacitor, which in the original game was called the Sex Force, but they changed it to the Flux Capacitor since it's no longer Nostalgia Critic, now it's Fred Flux. And then that opens the final stage. They also changed a couple of level names. They changed the name of Hang Dong 97 to be Nerds vs. Ninjas. With everything put together, there's a total of 19 stages in the second game, including the tutorial, as opposed to the 10 stages, including the tutorial in the first game. Now we'll quickly move on to the third game. The third game is much shorter. It's only 3 stages, well, 4 stages, 3 regular stages and a boss. Like I said, it's basically just an extra world for AVGN 2. It even carries over what upgrades you had in AVGN 2. A mysterious tower appears in the sky. As you get to it, you find out that it was done by Bugs Bunny, or who, as he's referred to in this, the fucking rabbit. The third game is a little bonus. It's very short and to the point, but it was fun. It was nice to have that little additional content added in. So, I loved these games. Again, some of the changes from the original I was a little disappointed with, but other changes I was fine with. Having never played the original, it is what it is. But the game does a very good job at balancing the frustrating with the reasonable. Like I said, some of the mechanics are really annoying. It's very precise platforming. Death blocks are a pain in the ass. There's gravity switching that can be a pain in the ass. But I think this game strikes a very good balance at challenging and fair. So there's a little bit of bullshit, but it's just enough to get you motivated to keep playing. I can't imagine playing on a difficulty without the checkpoints. I think the checkpoints were definitely a must for me playing it at the very least. There's no way in hell I'd be able to play on the hardest difficulty where you literally only have 1 health and 1 life. And no checkpoints, and more death blocks. There's no way in hell I'd be able to do that. There's also no way in hell I'm going to get all the trophies for this game, because there's no way I'm going to complete every stage without dying. But I'm going to try to get as many as possible. Overall, these games were really fun, and as a fan of AVGN, I loved the humor, I loved all the different references and callback to the show. I wish the movie references were left in. I think it's a little lame that they removed them. I think maybe removing Death Moxix made sense, because having Death Moxix show up at the end was kind of stupid in the original. Like, he had nothing to do with the plot. Nostalgia critics like, wait, nerd, look! It's Death Moxix. This was all his game the whole time. Whereas Fred Flux actually gives a reason for why his big mech is now turning against them. Nevertheless, though, I would have liked to have had the movie references intact, but it is what it is. Overall, out of the challenging platformers I've played, this is probably my favorite. To be fair, I haven't played a lot. I played a little bit of Celeste. I've never played I Wanna Be the Guy, but I've seen people play it. So, you know, this I would say is probably not as hard as that, but it definitely is a challenge, and it's lots of fun. If you like AVGN, it's a really good game to play, has an amazing soundtrack, and a lot of good references to the show itself. Overall, I love these games, so I thought I'd do a quick little review. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Let me know what you thought of these games down in the comments below. Have a good one. Toodles.